You need enemies? I got you. In my last video, I went over how to make a combat system, so I suggest taking a look at that to get you set up. Alright, let's get started. So let's start with the dummy enemy we made last time. To recap, we have this enemy's stat script that holds the enemy's health, attack, speed, etc. And also it has a take damage function that our hitbox calls when colliding with said enemy. The only thing that has changed is this knockback boolean. If it's true, then it will knock back the enemy. We'll see how we use that in the behavior script we'll make soon. Another thing is death. It's just a simple if statement that will check if the health is 0 or below and then destroy the entity. Also leaving behind a nice particle effect. With that done, we can get out of this and make our enemy behavior script. Here we'll make some references to the enemy stat script, our controller script, the rigid body, and the animator. Also make these 3 variables. Coming into our update function, we'll check that knockback boolean in our stat script, and if it's true, we'll call the knockback function. We've also got an enemy behavior function under this if statement, and I'll show you what that does in a second. Make your behavior function, and we're just going to leave this empty for now. And then making the knockback function, we do this. Make the rigid body's velocity 0 before doing anything. We'll calculate the distance from the enemy to the player. I use the ground check position here to have an upwards arc when hitting, but that's just a personal preference. After, we'll add force to our rigid body like this. Then here we'll switch on the freeze boolean, so whatever is in our empty behavior function won't function. Then after, turning back the knockback boolean in our enemy stat script. Also, we want to invoke this function after 0.4 seconds. What it will do, it will turn the freeze boolean off and then reset our velocity again. That's all we need to do in the script, but for now, let's just add one more function we'll be using, and that's the flip function. And this is how it looks like. Now that that's done, we can exit and let's check something in the attack script we made in the last tutorial. What the script does, it will damage whatever enemy overlaps it. We got a boolean here that will make it either knock back or not. But we also got this, which will trigger the enemy animator's hurt parameter. Let's set that up right now. Let's go to our animator and make 2 new animations, one idle and one getting clapped. When that's done, go into our animator and make a trigger parameter called hurt. Now set this up so when the trigger is triggered, it will trigger the hurt animation and go back once it's done. With that all done, your product so far should look like this. Now we can hit the dummy around until it dies. The dummy doesn't like this though. Let's give the enemy some of its own tricks. We can start by giving it a hurt box. Make an empty object, give it a box collider with trigger on and a kinematic rigid body. Then we want to have a similar script to the attack script, and this is how it looks like. When it collides with the player tag, it will call the change health function and damage it. Then it will call the animator and trigger hurt, which we'll get to soon. Then activating a boolean called invincible in our player script. We can see in the if statement that this won't run if the player is invincible. Let's see how this works. In our player stat script, we got our public ball invincible and also a new function down here, and all it does, it will turn that ball off. How will we use this? Using the animator. We'll make 2 new animations, one getting smacked and the other doing this flashy thing. All I did here is just fluctuate the alpha between 100 and 255. At the end of this function, we'll call upon our invincible function in our player script. Putting that all together, we can see that the player is now receiving damage and have an invincibility time before being allowed to be hurt again. Now with that done, we can start making the enemy behaviors. We're going to create 3 types of enemies. One grounded that will patrol a platform and swing at the player when they get near. One flying enemy that will chase the player. And one that will follow set points and shoot projectiles at the player. Let's start with the first one. I have their prefab here, and it's pretty much the same as the dummy except it's red and it has this cool mace. You want to give this a ground checked object and a wall checked object, which is just going to be empty game objects. We'll see how we'll be using this later. On the mace, it has a hurt box switched off, similar to the one that the player has on their katana, and that's because we are going to do the exact same thing with it. After making the idle and hurt animations for him, I made a 3rd animation for swinging. At the swing, it will switch it on and off at the end. Also, if you're going to have different attack states like here in the animator, make sure you have the hurt animations in a different layer. Just gotta put the weight at 0.9 and then make an empty state as the default transition, and the rest is self-explanatory. I made a boolean parameter called in range. When it's switched on, it will start swinging and it will only finish when the boolean is off. After that, make a duplicate of your dummy script, rename it grounded enemy, and coming in, we'll put the enemy behavior function to use. Add these 5 variables. This is everything that we'll need to make this work. In our enemy behaviour function, this is what we need to do here. This makes it move if the player is not next to it. This will check if the player is close to it, and if it is, it will turn on the attack boolean, as well as flipping if the player is behind them. Else, it will turn attacking false. If the attacking boolean is false, then it will just patrol. It will walk forward until there's a wall in front of it, or if there's a drop, turning the other direction. This bit is just to check if it's grounded. Also, at the end, make sure you set the in-range animation parameter to the attacking boolean, plus make sure to add this line in the flip function so it switches walking directions as well. And with that, that's 1 out of the 3 done. Don't forget to throw on your references. For our goal here, it's pretty simple code. All I've done is give them a gravity scaling of 0. Duplicate the dummy script again and call it flying enemy. The only thing we want it to do is to move towards the player if they're in range. Then this makes it flip. That's literally it. It's done. Now our final enemy. It will move between different points and shoot at us if we are in range. This is how we do it. I gave them a 0 gravity scale as well, then I made a positions object that will parent all of these different transforms. Then after duplicating our dummy script again, this is how we do this. Make these 5 variables, these 3 are for moving and these 2 are for shooting. At the start, it will get all of the transforms that are in our positions list. Then it will do a for each loop. This will get all of the transforms in our pos array and then deparent them. We want to do this, otherwise our transforms will move with the game object and the enemy will never reach it. This will check if we reach our first destination, and if we have, it will go to the next destination until we loop back around. Else it will keep moving towards the first destination. This again flips the enemy depending on where the character is. This will check if the player is in range, and if it is, it will start this countdown. As soon as it hits 0, this will trigger a spit parameter in the animator, afterwards setting the countdown again to a random range between 4 and 7. We also want to make another function I called spit. This will just spawn the projectile in and shoot towards the player and set it to destroy it after 3 seconds. Saving and coming out of a range enemy script, we want to make our projectiles. Just need a sprite, a box collider with trigger on, a dynamic rigid body with no gravity, you get it. In the script, we want it to destroy the projectile when it collides with a surface or player tag. This will just spawn a particle effect, which I'll show you how to do soon. I also made it do the same with the attack tag, so you could block projectiles with your own attack. Also having this extra branch to say blocked when that's performed, but that's just a personal preference. And that is it for the enemy projectile. Remember to reference everything in the inspector. Oh, and just like how we made the shooting animation for our player, we're going to make a shooting animation for this enemy here. After that's done, we're going to click here and call the spit function. After making your parameter and linking everything together in the animator, you are ready to go. In the scene, we can now duplicate our points and add as many as we want, and in play, it will start moving. And just like that, we reach the end of the tutorial. If you followed everything just right, it should look like this. If you found this tutorial helpful, please show your boy some support, and I wish you good luck in all of your games. Have fun!